Tell him. Just
Let's talk about Kenan, the fourth from Adam, and he was like Solomon in his wisdom. All right, according to, well, Kenan, first of all, he is named as the fourth from Adam in Genesis, and he's part of um, all of our he's like our ancestor. Like, doesn't matter if you're black, white, or whoever from Asia. If you're watching this and you're human, according to Genesis in the Bible, um, we're all descended from him. Okay, because he was the ancestor of Noah, who we're all descended from currently. Okay, so who is this man? He was like a king on the earth. Um, Genesis doesn't tell us that, but other books do. Other ancient books do. Okay, according to the book of Jasher, chapter 2, it says that Kenan grew up and he was like 40 years old, and he became wise and had knowledge and skill in all wisdom, and he reigned over all the sons of men. And he led the sons of men to wisdom and knowledge, and with his wisdom, he ruled over spirits and demons. That was really interesting, right? You see, like spirits and demons, so it makes a distinction between the two. That there are spirits out there that are not necessarily demons, but there are other spirits. So that's interesting. I've heard this that concept before, um, and so it's interesting that was there in this ancient text. And let's keep going and find out more about Kenan. I'm going to switch back and forth between calling him Kenan and Canaan because depending on the translation, it's both ways. Okay. All right. So one important thing about him is that he wrote the prophecy of the flood. So basically served as a role as a prophet because he knew beforehand by his wisdom that the flood was going to happen, that God was going to flood the earth. So this is interesting because he was, you know, generations before Enoch was born. Enoch was the one who went to the watchers and condemned them, told them God's message and said, hey, God's like, no, you're going to be destroyed. And children, the Nephilim, the giants. So, and he destroyed everybody by a flood. Okay. So Kenan knew that this was going to happen, and he wrote this down as prophecy on some tablets, stone tablets, which is really cool, according to Jasher too. And another thing, so was okay. Something about Kenan. He was the king of the whole known earth, like over all the humans, um, according to the Book of Jubilees and Jasher, I think. Yeah, Jasher. Um, so I was like, well, there must be other ancient accounts of him if he was like the king of everybody at this time. So I was looking into that, and it turned out the Sumerian list of kings is a real archaeological find that has detailed names and dates or whatever of like their ancient kings, even before the flood, which is very interesting because, yeah, it mentions the Great Flood, and then it has kings before that, so they remembered the antediluvian world and rulers, right? Okay, so their third ruler that they mentioned, the third and fourth rulers are interesting because they're not normal names like the other rulers were. They were descriptions. So one was likely to correspond with the biblical figure of Canaan, um, is Enmenluana. That's obviously the English version how to say it, but that phrase means the Lord who holds kingship granted from heaven. That's like I feel like that they might be talking about Canaan right there. And the other phrase, I didn't write it down here on this. Yeah, I'll give you a bigger version. Look at that. I didn't write it down here, but there's a different phrase that talks about the fourth king, which I believe is Enoch. Because I'll get into it in a later video. I don't think I released that video yet. But I will release a video about Enoch. And he was probably mentioned in that kings list too as the fourth king, because he was after Kenan, and he was also really great on the earth. Like people followed him, like the whole earth. He was like king of the earth as well. Um, you know, so that was very interesting. Go ahead and look. Go here. So yeah, righteous ruler. Well, said he has wisdom like Solomon. Basically, I'm the one who's comparing the two to Solomon. Like he's like an antediluvian figure that was like Solomon because he was so great and known for his wisdom, and that he also like was ruling over spirits and demons and stuff like Solomon also did, which isn't very greatly known either. But that's something that we'll get into in future videos as well. King Solomon. Um, but yeah, but the good thing about Kenan, I say he's a righteous ruler because uh, he turned, well, according to Jasher too, he turned some of the sons of men to the service of God. So that's interesting. So I'm like, that's good. That is good. To the service of the true God, you know. All right, and then we have Canaan's children. This is where it gets very interesting. It seemed like he probably had like 5 kids at one time because the way they said he was 7 years old and then he had boom 5 kids. So 3 sons, 2 daughters, and the 2 daughters are play a very interesting and important role. So let me make this bigger. So the firstborn was Mahalalel, and his 2 daughters. By the way, Mahalalel was like the grandfather of Enoch, and his 2 daughters were Adah and Zillah, which were also mentioned in Genesis as the wives of Lamech, who was also mentioned in Genesis as Cain's descendant. Lamech was Cain's descendant, and they are the first recorded instance of polygamy in the Bible and in Jasher. So that's interesting. Those two right there. Okay. Their stories are important because it talks about like they. Okay, so one daughter, I think it was Ada. Ada was the one who had children. One of her children's name was Jubal, and the other one was like I forgot his name, but yeah, they were like the fathers of like musicians and stuff like that. They were really big on musicians and stuff, and on music. And then the other one, Zillah, was like she drank this potion or whatever that made her barren. And I think it also mentioned this in Genesis that people begin to sin against the Lord in those days of the commandment that God said to Adam and Eve, which was to be fruitful and multiply. They sinned against the Lord in those days because they started to have like uh, multiple wives, and in those multiple wives, they would only cherish the one that was barren. Like they would make up this. They made this concoction that once the woman drank it, they became barren, and they so to keep their form, and so that they would stay beautiful for longer. That's what they said in the books. And yeah, so the younger, well, Zillah is the one who drank that potion, and so yeah. Anyway, but God did was favorable towards her, and like even though she drank that potion in her youth, in her old age, she did bear a son, and his name was like Tubal Cain, and him and his father was really old at this point. It was like had bad eyesight. Uh, so Lamech and Tubal Cain, his young son, who was a child, and they went hunting. He was like a bowman, he was using the bows and stuff. So he saw what appeared to him at looked like an animal from far away, and he was still a good shot apparently. And then boom, you know, killed that animal who turned out not to be an animal. It was Cain. It was Cain. Their great granddad. So that was the thing. And then Zillah. Oh yeah, and then so Lamech found out, that he killed Cain, and he was like, oh, got really upset at the little boy because the little boy pointed out. I was like, oh yeah, there's a animal there. Go, you can kill that one. But the little boy was young. He didn't know. He didn't know it was Cain, and so the man got upset and killed his son too. So he killed 2 people at one day. One was an accident. One was not an accident. I mean, I don't think he meant to kill him, according to the. Anyway, he didn't mean to kill him, but he didn't. He did kill him, and that was not good. And so he did cause his death. You know, so his wives were very angry with him. Wouldn't talk to him. Just wanted to not have anything to do with him. What's interesting, according to Jasher, I don't know if this is true or not exactly, but um, according to Jasher, it says that Adam told both of them, Zillah and Ada, um, to go back to their husband and make up with him and just be with him, and that's what they did. And they heard him out because Lamech did say, he was like, it was an accident. I didn't mean to kill. I did this thing unknowingly. I had bad eyesight. You know, and I get the Cain part where he killed Cain unknowingly, but his son, I don't know if that was as much of an accident, but because he was angry and he was like, he struck him. So anyway, but yeah, but they forgave him. And so that was a whole big old episode. And I think it's interesting that that was written there in the book of Jasher. I don't remember if it was in Jubilees. It might have been. And but it was, I know those names were mentioned in Genesis too. So interesting story. Let's keep going. Oop, I think that's it. All right, that's all I want to talk about about Canaan, Kenan slash Kenan and his generational line so far. But why is he important? Because like he was like the great grandfather of Enoch, and then actually he's like the grandfather of Enoch, and then who's really important. Okay, so thank you for watching.